Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. Tonight we have Alan Pultyniewicz, the Recycling Coordinator for Montgomery County's Department of Environmental Protection, Recycling and Resource Management Division, Waste Reduction and Recycling Section. Please remain muted during the presentation, and there will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end. In addition, we also have Poolesville's Assistant Town Manager, Niles Anderegg, on hand to field any questions you might have specific about Poolesville. So whenever you're ready, you can begin.
Thank you, Kelly. Good evening, everyone. I have a little slideshow. I hope everyone can see the slides okay.
Yep.
Perfect. So I'm going to give just a generic overview of the county's recycling program, sort of where we are now, some of the programs we have. If you have any town-specific questions, I'm glad Niles is here. I'm sure he'll be able to answer any town-specific questions. But wanted just to share with you sort of what's coming here from Montgomery County and just how you can green your ways at home. So I just wanted to start with the overall picture of the amount of waste that's generated. So across the United States in 2018, and this is the last set of facts from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. In 2018, over 292 million tons of waste was generated in the U.S. Here in Montgomery County, we're averaging about 1 million to 1.1 million tons. Since COVID, we're actually been down below that 1 million threshold. Our most recent number is about 950,000 tons of solid waste generated. So we have seen a decrease. But again, we don't know if that's a direction because people are reducing waste or an effect of the pandemic. So it's really hard to tell right now, but historically, that's a number we're around 1 to 1.1 million tons of waste generated. In effect, though, when you average all that number out, it averages about 5 pounds of trash per person per day. So each and every one of us generates about 5 pounds of trash per day throughout the course of the year. And so it's a lot of materials that's being generated. And our goal is to reduce waste and recycle more, aiming for zero waste. That is our current goal here in Montgomery County, to aim for zero waste. So what are some of the ways we can do that? The first thing we all can do is to reduce waste at the very beginning. If you reduce waste, meaning you're not creating it in the first place, then we don't have to figure out, does it go into the trash container? Does it go in with paper? Is it yard trim? What is that material? It's not being generated in the first place. You don't have to worry about managing that material. So reducing waste by, for example, simple tips, using both sides of paper, donating books or clothing to others, using reusable containers, reusable bags, reusable utensils, things that you can wash over and over again, and donating things that you have that you normally would have thrown away but are still good condition to your favorite charitable organizations. And these are just simple things that each and every one of us can do, whether we're living in the county, if we're working in the county, things that we can take to reduce the amount of waste, to reuse materials that have already been created so we don't have to buy new products. That will go a long way in reducing the amount of waste that we have to manage here in Montgomery County. One of the ways to manage waste, of course, after reducing waste and reusing is recycling. So I'm going to go through the materials that we can recycle here in Montgomery County. If you come to the Shady Grove transfer station and processing facility in Durwood, these are all the materials that residents can drop off no matter where you live in Montgomery County. But here in Montgomery County, these are all the acceptable recyclable materials that we process at the recycling center at our facility. So I'll start with the easy stuff, your glass bottles and jars. Any clear, green, or brown glass bottle and jar is recyclable. Just make sure it's empty. If you can, lightly rinse it out. You can leave the label on that glass bottle and jar. We recommend that you take off the cap. Keep the caps off the containers before you put them in the recycling bin. Aluminum cans, aluminum foil products, aluminum foil are all recyclable here in the county. Again, make sure those containers are empty, a light rinse. Aluminum foil, scrape off any of the remaining food on that item. A light rinse, you can ball up that aluminum foil and we will recycle that. bimetal, steel, and tin cans. Those are your pet food containers, your soup cans, vegetable cans. Again, empty out those containers, a light rinse. You can leave the little paper label on, but then we can recycle those metal cans. And then the plastics, and I leave that for last here because that's where we tend to get a lot of confusion. If we were in person, I would have some items to show you um, that are recyclable or not recyclable in the county. Most of us are very familiar with the number. There's a number printed on the bottom of most containers within that the 3 chasing arrows. That only means that that product is made from that plastic resin. There are 7 different plastic resin types that plastics are made from. Number 1, for example, number 1, PETE or polyethylene terephthalate. Those are your water bottles, your soda bottles, whether it be clear or green. Those are recyclable. Here in Montgomery County, for plastics, we take all plastic bottles and containers with a few exceptions. If that plastic container contained a hazardous or automotive product like motor oil or antifreeze, we will not take that product. We do not accept any plastic bags, plastic film, or plastic shrink wrap in our program. Most of the grocery stores in the county, some retailers, Safeway, Giant, Whole Foods, Harris Teeter, uh, Target, they have drop-off programs for plastic bags and film, and not just plastic shopping bags, for example, but they'll take produce bags, Ziploc bags, dry cleaner bags, the plastic bags that contain a newspaper, for example, all that stretchable plastic film, even plastic bubble wrap, and even that plastic Amazon packaging where you get that plastic packaging, those can all go back to the grocery stores and some retailers, and they'll recycle those. But don't put them in your curbside recycling program because that plastic bag gets entangled in the processing equipment at the recycling facilities, and it causes a major issue. Plus, it gets very dirty, and the market for the plastic bags needs a clean product, and they don't want plastic bags that have broken pieces of glass, sticky substances. They don't want pieces of dirt or pieces of paper stuck in those plastic shrink wrap or plastic bags. So take all those plastic bags to the stores. We also do not accept number 6 plastic. So any plastic that has a number 6 is a form of polystyrene. And there are 2 forms of polystyrene. There's expanded polystyrene, which you're most familiar with being the foam packaging, those foam cups, the foam clamshells. And then the other form of number 6 plastics is rigid number 6 plastic. It's the same type of material, it's just how they manufacture that product. Here in Montgomery County back in 2015, we banned the use and sale of expanded polystyrene, the foam polystyrene. And in 2020, we modified the requirements to ban any type of number 6, the use and sale of any number 6. So it includes those famous red Solo cups. If you look at the bottom of a red Solo cup, you'll see number 6 stamped on there. That's a rigid polystyrene. So since we implemented these bans, we're seeing less and less of these non-recyclable number 6 plastics out there. However, we can only control here in Montgomery County. So if the materials are shipped into the county from outside the county, that's where we're still finding materials coming in because it's being shipped into the county. But here in Montgomery County, none of the food service businesses can either use polystyrene food serviceware, and no retailers can sell the polystyrene food serviceware. So that should take care of some of the number 6 issues. And then number 7 plastics are recyclable unless it says number 7, in other words, compostable below that number 7. Those compostable plastics are plant-based material. They're not petroleum-based. They're manufactured to be processed at a composting facility where the materials are broken down using organisms, heat, temperature, moisture, and you get a beneficial soil amendment through that process. They're not meant to be put into a recycling bin. So we do take all number 7 plastics, and those would be your reusable water jugs, those bluish color water jugs, painter buckets, those plastic pails, some plastic toys, those rigid plastics, we will take as part of our recycling. But if it's compostable, don't put it into a recycling bin. So those are the generic do's and don'ts of what we call commingled materials. And I'm going to save plenty of time for question and answers at the end. So just if you have a question, jot it down, and we will come back to that and answer the questions at the end. In terms of paper, here in Montgomery County, we take all clean and dry paper. So that's your cardboard, paperboard boxes, your snack food boxes, cereal boxes, paper egg cartons, toothpaste boxes, pasta boxes. Even if it has that little plastic window, that little window for the pasta boxes, you don't need to remove that little plastic film. It can be processed in the paper recycling process. We take newspapers, magazines, catalogs, on want to mail. If you have some old telephone books hiding in your basement, you can take those out and recycle those. We take paperback books and hardcover books as well. Of course, if those books are in good condition and you can donate them, please, by all means, donate them to your favorite charitable organization or to the libraries. But if those pages are torn, they're yellow, they're not in a good condition to donate, they are recyclable in the county. We also take shredded paper. So if you have a home shredder and you're shredding your confidential paper at home, just put that shredded paper in a paper bag, seal that bag, and then we can also recycle that shredded paper. And then coated paper items. So these are your milk and juice cartons, juice and drink boxes, frozen food containers, ice cream, the paper ice cream containers. Even though they contain food or beverage, they are actually made from paper. So you can tear it and you'll see the paper fibers. For those coated paper items, please make sure those containers are empty, a light rinse, but then they go in with your mixed paper. It also includes your paper beverage cup. So if you go to any of the coffee places and get your paper coffee cups, once that coffee's empty out of that cup, you can then add it to the mixed paper. Again, just make sure it's empty before you toss it in. With the paper cartons, that plastic cap, please take off the plastic cap, remove it from the container. You can leave that plastic spout on the container. You don't need to cut out that spout, but we do ask you to remove that cap. The cap and lids for the paper cartons and from all your glass bottles and jars, the plastic containers, we also will accept with our commingle materials. So you can toss the caps and lids loose with the commingle materials. And we do a lot more. So again, these are the general curbside type materials that a lot of folks are familiar with, that we also have the drop off. But for other materials, we take all types of scrap metal items. Basically, our definition of scrap metal is anything that contains 51% or more metal. So metal lawn furniture, a lawnmower, bicycle, metal filing cabinets, those type of things are considered scrap metal. We do take yard trim, grass clippings, leaves, and garden trimmings. We actually encourage folks to grass cycle, leaving the grass clippings on the lawn when you mow, or composting that yard trim in your backyard, as opposed to putting that in a bag and putting it at the curb for collection or to drop it off at the transfer station. We take bulky rigid plastic. These are items that are generally too big for a curbside program. So they could be plastic lawn furniture, plastic kiddie pools, plastic toys, plastic crates. They don't fit in our recycling collection trucks, but we have a dedicated drop-off area at the recycling center for the bulky rigid plastics. Most of those plastics, just so you're aware, do not have the numbers with the chasing arrows because it's a rigid material. It's not the traditional type of packaging we're used to. So you may not see a number on those plastics, but we will take the plastics even without a number on those. We take electronics, computers, televisions, printers, things like that. If the item has a cord, basically we consider that an electronic. We were starting the presentation, the meeting, somebody asked about a coffee pot. We would consider the coffee pots with the cord an electronic item. So if you have the ability, you can drop them off for electronics recycling, then we can get those materials recycled. We also accept motor oil, antifreeze, tires, textiles, and reusable building materials. So these are other drop-offs we have at the transfer station. So if you haven't been there or not familiar with it, these are the things we do take. And if you've been there, you're very familiar with these programs. But we've also implemented a couple of new initiatives over the past several months I wanted to bring to everyone's attention. Earlier this year, we started our durable medical equipment reuse program, where we will take things like wheelchairs, walkers, hospital beds, mobility type things to help people who are experiencing mobility issues. We are partnering with the Maryland Department of the Aging. And what we're doing is at the recycling center, at the transfer station, we have a drop-off container for residents to bring us their durable medical equipment. And then the Department of Aging is taking these materials to their warehouse in Prince George's County, where they're inspecting them, they're sanitizing them. If they have to do any minor repairs, they're repairing them. And then they're getting out to residents here in Maryland who are experiencing mobility issues. So it's a great reuse program, and it's keeping this really important type of material out of the waste stream and into the hands of those who are who are really in dire need of this equipment for their daily lives. So we just started this program, and it was officially kicked off at the end of April, and we've collected a lot of this durable equipment already, so we know it's a successful program. On May 1st at the transfer station, we implemented a new program for mattresses and box springs. This was a major issue for us for many, many years. There was no way for us to recycle these materials, and it was being handled as trash. We're averaging about 200 to 300 mattresses per day at the transfer station, so it's quite a lot of material. But as of May 1st, we have a vendor who is now taking the mattresses and the box springs. They're breaking them down into the different components, the metals, the wood, the padding material, and all those components are being recycled. So we just kicked this off on May 1st, and we're really excited that we're now able to do mattresses and box springs at the transfer station. Also on May 1st, we expanded our textile recycling program to include additional materials, not just clothing, but we will take other materials such as draperies, tablecloths, kitchen linens, towels, placemats, pillowcases, linens, quilts, even stuffed animals we take now. So we have a lot of updated information on our website that lists all the different types of textile materials that we do accept now for recycling at the transfer station. One of the other areas of interest for a lot of people are food scraps. You know, we are trying to minimize the amount of food disposed in the waste stream. We estimate about 118,000 tons of food are thrown away each year here in Montgomery County. That's 118,000 tons of food waste. So of course, naturally, our first thing is to, if it's edible food, you know, to donate that edible food, get it to people who are facing food insecurity, working through our food assistance providers. Reducing food to begin with. Our food is too good to waste campaign to encourage residents to, you know, shop right, cook the food, and then prepare the food, and then save the food so that way you can have leftovers if you have any left over, in the proper ways that handle that food so it doesn't spoil and go to waste, and then recycling of those food scraps. So we have a couple of residential programs we're working with right now. We are testing a pilot for single-family residential food scraps recycling at the curb. We are providing residents with a 35-gallon wheeled cart. We are providing them with the in-kitchen unit container with some compostable bags and educational materials. And then once a week, on the residents' normal recycling day, we are recycling, our food scraps recycling contractor is coming along and collecting those food scraps. Those food scraps are going to the Prince George's County compost facility in Upper Marlboro, where they're making leaf grow gold from the yard trim and the food scraps that they collect. So we have a pilot area that we started in 2021, November 2021, in the Silver Spring area. We have another pilot in the Potomac area that started in December of 2021. This past March, at the end of March in 2023, we have a pilot area in the Bethesda Rockville area, and we're working on trying to get one up and running in the Germantown, Gaithersburg, Montgomery Village area. We're waiting for that fourth area. We have to have a certain number of households who've signed up to participate before we can have the trucks rolling through, but we're getting very close to that number. So we're very excited that very soon we'll be able to have 4 collection pilot areas running, and we're getting a lot of great data from the residents participating in these areas. With the goal, naturally, is to have a countywide residential food scraps collection program at the curb. In the meantime, some residents want to compost in their backyard. Here in Montgomery County, our solid waste code prohibits the disposal of food scraps in compost bins that are not considered as rodent proof. So we have been testing 2 types of compost bins, a static compost bin, as you see there on the screen, the bottom picture there, that black earth machine, as well as a hot frog tumbler. It's a tumbler off the ground. It's a barrel with 2 dual chambers, and you can rotate that compost bin with the materials circling around in there. So we're testing out these 2 rodent-proof compost bins. We have about 1,000 compost bins that are out there being tested. Residents were giving us feedback on the materials, what they're putting in, measuring the temperature of the materials to make sure those materials are being composted, giving us an idea if there's any odors or pests as a result of composting the food scraps. We also provide them with a lot of educational materials to give them proper instructions on how to properly compost so they don't introduce problems into the system where then they get issues with insects or rodents and things like that. So it's been a really a great effort. This past April and May, we distributed another 800 of these compost bins. So with the goal of this backyard project is to provide residents the opportunity, if they so choose and want to recycle certain types of food scraps in the backyard, to provide them with the resources to do so. For many, many years, we have been providing backyard yard trim compost bins that are only designed for your grass clippings and leaves, but not for the food scraps. So these are dedicated compost bins for the food scraps. So this is a really exciting program we're working on to get food out of the waste stream. One thing to keep in mind through all this, there are certain types of materials that should never end up in the trash. And one example are batteries. We're seeing an increase in trash fires, and the number one cause of those fires are being attributed to batteries, lithium ion batteries, for example. Unfortunately, sometimes it's hard to tell the difference between a rechargeable battery and a regular alkaline battery. So here in Montgomery County, we do ask all residents, please do not put any type of batteries in your trash or in your recycling. Please bring them to us as a drop-off. We do accept it at our household hazardous waste drop-off area, all of these batteries. There are some retailers, Staples, for example, Best Buy, some other retailers that will also take batteries as a drop-off at their commercial establishments. And these are the proper ways to handle batteries. So we do ask residents, please keep out batteries. Don't put them in trash because it can result in trash fires. And then to close the presentation today, I just want to quickly show you a couple slides of what happens to recyclable materials. People always want to know, well, is it actually being recycled? Where is it going? So the materials that we collect, that Montgomery County collects through our curbside program, comes to our facility at the Shady Grove Transfer Station to the recycling center. If you haven't had the chance to visit inside the recycling center where we process the materials, we really do encourage you to go visit the facility. We do tours of the facility. We're back open again after COVID, so we can schedule tours for groups of 10 or more. If you don't have 10 or more people, you can go as individuals and do a self-guided tour, but it's really quite an interesting facility. The first step of the process when the materials come up the conveyor belt is our initial sorting line, where we're removing contaminants. So if somebody does put the recyclables in a plastic bag, our sorters are ripping open those plastic bags because those plastic bags can get entangled in our processing equipment. If there is styrofoam blocks, for example, or styrofoam coolers that residents have attempted to recycle, we're pulling them off the line here. Or any oversized item that we can recycle, but it's too big to fit through our processing equipment, we're pulling it off at this point and bypassing the equipment and sending it directly to the baler to be baled into the plastic bales that we ship out for recycling, but it might get stuck in our equipment. So that's what this first picture here shows. At the very end of the line, where no one really can see because it's at the top of our facility, is our glass sorting line. And by the time the materials get to this point, all that these sorters are touching is glass, because through our other mechanical processes, we pulled off the plastics, the aluminum, and the metal. So the only thing on this line is glass. And here the sorters are separating out by color. We market the clear glass, and then we mix the green and brown as what we call gramber, and we market that, and that's being made into new glass containers and jars. And we're getting revenue for all these recyclable materials. The only material that we are currently paying to get recycled are the small pieces of broken glass, what we call mixed broken coal. It's pretty much things that are smaller than like 2 inches in diameter. We're not able to sort out those really small pieces of glass. That glass just gets mixed together, and we're paying to get that recycled. And they're recycling that into a product called Glassfault. It's basically a subsurface for roads. So again, it's being recycled, but we have to pay for that material to get recycled. But everything else, we're getting revenues for selling these materials to the recycling markets. This is just another picture of some of the sorting. The upper right-hand photo there, those are our plastic sorters who are pulling off the different types of plastics. The picture on your left sort of has a picture of our shaker screen where we're initially shaking out the materials, and it also pulls off the ferrous metal containers. The bottom right picture there are materials coming off, going into our container for baling. And then the picture on the bottom left is just some of the tubes that the materials sort of get vacuumed up into those tubes to move over into storage silo prior to baling. So it's just an amazing facility. Again, if you haven't gone there, please go there. At the end of our process, all the plastics, all the metals, all the aluminum, all the foil, we bale. These bales can weigh anywhere from 12, 15, 16, 1700 pounds. Again, it's just compressed materials together. The glasses, of course, we don't bale the glass. We just put that into a bunker and then it gets scooped up into a truck. But all these other materials are baled, and then we sell them to the recycling markets. And this is where then these materials go to be processed and then made into new materials. So a couple of the key items here, plastics, for example, in the plastics recycling process, the plastics get washed, they get cut. That's where they remove the plastic labels or any minor contaminants that are in there. Then those plastic flakes get melted down. And then as that plastic is cooled, it's a strand of plastic, it's chopped into little pieces called pellets. And then those pellets, that bottom photo there, are then sent to manufacturers to be made into clothing, into carpeting, into picnic tables, into recycling bins or trash containers, automobile fenders, a variety of materials. So that's generally what happens with plastics once it leaves our facility. The glass, basically glass is melted down and then turned into new glass bottles and jars. So again, our clear glass and our gramber is melted down. It might be mixed with some soda ash and limestone and sand before it's formed into new containers. Again, the real tiny pieces of broken glass, it's not going through this process because it's not being made into a new container, but it's being used as a subsurface for roadway construction. Aluminum cans, basically within 60 days from the time you put an aluminum can in a recycling bin, it will be back on the store shelf as a new aluminum can. Those metal cans are basically sorted, they're shredded, they're melted, and then formed into a brand new can again. So it's a 60-day loop from the time you put that aluminum can into your blue bin or whatever color your recycling bin is into a new aluminum can. And then with paper, basically paper is chopped, it's mixed with water, it's de-inked. They remove the ink from that paper pulp, and then that paper pulp is then rolled out, pressed, dried out, and turned into brand new paper products. And that's what happens with paper after it leaves our facility. And so at the end here, one thing to remind everyone to keep recycling working, to create the demand for the materials that we're recycling here in Montgomery County. Please buy recycled. Look for that symbol with the recycling symbol that's enclosed within that round circle there. That designates the item is made with recycled content. And you want to buy the highest percentage of post-consumer recycled content as possible. Post-consumer recycled content are the materials that we place into the recycling bins as consumers after we're done using it. And then those materials are then processed and made into new materials. If the product says pre-consumer, those are materials that are being cut at the manufacturing process. So for example, when they make paper, if they're trimming the paper, that paper trim, it's not going to be sold to the public. It's going to be recycled back into their system into new paper. So that's pre-consumer. But that material never left the warehouse. It never got into our hands as consumers. So try to look for the highest percentage of post-consumer recycled content as possible. And just some quick examples for plastics. They can be made into fleece jackets, carpeting, sleeping bags, vests, paper made into brand new writing paper, napkins, cardboard boxes, cereal boxes, notepads, and then taking the plastic bags I talked a little about earlier. It's mixed with sawdust and turned into plastic alternative lumber. They can use glass bottles to make countertops. They can use recycled paper to make countertops, household items, building construction materials made from recycled metals such as recycled aluminum sinks. So these are just a variety of the tens of thousands of materials available on the marketplace made from recycled materials. So again, look for that symbol, look for the words made with recycled content, and look for the highest percentage of post-consumer recycled content as possible. So closing here, just remember reduce, reuse, recycle, and recycle right. Try to keep everything that we can recycle in the bin. If we say it's not recyclable in Montgomery County, please don't try to put that into the bin thinking, well, it's somebody might be able to take it. It's not. There's not a market for it. We will only tell you of the materials that we can recycle. So try not to wish cycle by wishing that we might recycle by adding it to the bin. Try to keep those materials out. So with that, I'm happy to be, Kelly, turning it over for questions. And I'll see if I can stop sharing my screen.
Well, thank you so much for all of that information. That was very helpful. So if anybody has any questions, you can go ahead and ask them. And I do see that there was also some in the chat that we can get to. Does anybody have one offhand that they wanted to say?
I have a question. I don't know. Hi, my name's Ted Kingsley. I don't know if you can hear me, but I got a notice from the county about a year ago about a home pickup for electronic recycling. And so I gathered together a bunch of stuff, but when I went on the website, I couldn't find any information. And I still have, but it was sort of like scrap metal where you could call in advance or dial 311 and
Yes.
arrange for home electronic e-waste pickup. So is that in existence or not?
No, thanks for asking that question. So we are expanding our curbside collection pilot, our curbside collection program to include the addition of electronics and and batteries as a curbside material. But we are managing it just like we're doing with scrap metal right now. You have to schedule that as a pickup because it's not countywide. As our collection contracts are being changed over, we're adding that as a requirement in the contracts. But unfortunately, we're not able to, it's not a countywide right now. It's only in designated areas. So we only have about 50 to 60,000 homes that have that ability. So you have to call 311 to request that electronics collection. And we don't have it on the website yet because not everyone's eligible to receive
So
that. But
if we got the letter,
if you got the letter that you noticed, you can do that. So just
you
call
can do it.
311.
Okay. So
but
okay,
you have
I
to
was
call
discouraged.
311.
I
Yeah.
got it. Okay. And okay. I think that's, thank you. I thought I had another question, but I forgot it.
Somebody had posted, do we need to remove the plastic from junk mail?
Oh, good question. So just like with the pasta boxes, that little plastic envelope around envelopes, for example, you do not need to remove that plastic film. If you have staples in the paper, you don't need to remove the staples. If it has tape on there, you don't need to remove the tape. So don't worry about any of the plastics, the tape or staples in any of the paper.
Okay. Somebody had asked, can you be more specific about hazardous aerosol containers? And also that they thought Montgomery County accepted numbers 1 through 5. Is that correct?
Sure. And I apologize if I skipped over the hazardous aerosol. So we accept as part of our metals with the aluminum cans, with the metal containers, any empty non-hazardous aerosol can. So those would be your cooking oil sprays, deodorant sprays, general cleaning sprays. Once you depress on the nozzle and there's no more air coming out, and you can actually squeeze the metal container, that means it's no longer under pressure. You can then add that to your recycling bin. If it contains a hazardous product like a Raid, for example, a pesticide, don't bring it to us. Don't put it in the normal recycling. We will treat that as household hazardous waste as a drop off at our household hazardous waste drop off area. But we'll take the empty non-hazardous aerosol can. And for plastics, again, we take any plastic number 1 through 5 in 7s, no number 6, but we will also take number 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5s, and 7s, with the exceptions I mentioned, no number 4s, such as your plastic film. The plastic films are generally labeled number 4. Nothing that contain a hazardous or automotive product like a motor oil container. A lot of those motor oil containers are actually marked with a number 2, but because they had motor oil, we don't want that. And then any plastic that is labeled as compostable does not go into the recycling bin. So we take all plastics numbers 1 through 7, no number 6, and nothing that contain a hazardous or automotive product or plastic bags or compostable food serviceware.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody else want to unmute and ask a question, or should I continue with the chat questions?
I think I remembered, this is Ted again, I apologize. My question was, is there a place where we can send our compostable products, the products that say that they're compostable in a commercial compostable facility? You mentioned that place in Prince George's County, but is there a place where people in Montgomery County can take that stuff, or how do we do that?
Ted, that's a really good question. And that's one of the reasons why we're running all these little pilot programs. We have no large scale facility in Montgomery County that is taking compostable food serviceware or food scraps. We have in Dickerson our yard trim composting facility,
Right,
where we're making the leaf grow, but we're not able to process the food scraps or compostable food serviceware. In the state of Maryland, there's only a few facilities that are permitted by the state of Maryland to accept food scraps. The Prince George's County is one of those. There's also one, Key Compost in Frederick County is also licensed. There might be some small scale on-farm composting happening, but generally they're only taking food scraps and not able to take some of the compostable food service ware because it might take longer for those materials to break down. There's an anaerobic digestion facility that has opened up in Jessup in Howard County at the Maryland Wholesale Food Warehouse, but they don't necessarily, they only want food scraps. They really don't want the compostable food service ware because it doesn't really break down in their anaerobic digestion process. So as we're working on these various programs and we're looking at possibility of managing organics within Montgomery County, we're trying to find locations where that can happen and the type of way we're going to handle that, whether it be on like a windrow composting system or anaerobic digestion. Those are all questions that are still being worked on. So at this point, until we answer that question, the facility side where it's going, we're going to be slow in getting it across the board. But right now, the Prince George's County facility is the only one within the closest region, and I believe also Key Compost that can take the food service ware items.
They're both food scraps only, not the plates and
Utensils and stuff.
Right.
No,
So-
they'll take the compostable plates, compostable
Oh,
cups,
okay.
the
The
compostable
feed bags, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
So Prince William County does take the utensils and the plates?
the compostable food service at their compost facility in Upper Marlboro. They
But
do
you have
accept
to drive
compostable.
it there.
We'd have to take it there, right? We'd have to.
Well, it's not like necessarily open to the public. It's
Public.
a commercial type thing. So you, excuse me, you
Yeah.
really can't just, you
Yeah,
have
you
to have
can't
an
just-
account with them.
Just
So,
like you couldn't come out of the county to Shady Grove. You have to
Right.
be right. I
so,
got it.
so what happens in Prince George's County, because it's their own facility, they have a curbside collection program for their residents. And all
Right.
those materials are going
Take
to
advantage.
that
Right.
facility, but also
Mhm.
they also take commercial loads of waste. So our compost food scraps collector that's participating in our pilot program, they're a licensed collector and they have an account with the Prince George's facility. So that way they're able to take the food scraps from our pilot program as well as from their customers as well, because they have an account with them to drop off those materials. But it's not residents just driving over there.
So when you
Alan?
go,
Yeah, just 1 second. Can I just jump in for
Sure.
a second? I just wanted to say from the town, we're currently looking at, we don't know yet, and we don't know the particular details, but we're currently looking at having a drop-off location where people can drop off the thing that will then get taken to facilities. We are looking at different vendors and things like that. Sustainable Poolesville has been taking the lead on that. So that's something to look at down the road, but I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Thank you.
so I was wondering, like, when you go to restaurants and they have, they're using the compostable things, restaurants around here. I mean, do you know if you can count on them to be taking them to the right place? Or, I mean, I guess you have no way of knowing, but in Montgomery County, I mean, where would they be taking them?
Most of the restaurants that are doing food scraps collection that have the ability to do that, they have contracts with private collectors. So they're working with these private companies that are using these facilities. So we have our commercial food scraps recycling partnership program, but again, everything is going over to Prince George's County or to Jessup right now. Or there are the private companies that are collecting the food scraps from businesses, they're using these commercial facilities as well. So as long as they have a contract with that collector for those food scraps and that compostable food service ware, it most likely is going to one of those facilities.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Speaking of the food scraps, somebody was asking if the participants of the food scrap program can get the finished compost if they wanted to.
Yeah, it's a very good question. So in our pilot program, we are not providing that as an option. I know there's some private companies out there that are providing residential food scraps recycling, and as part of that program, they're entitled to receive some of the finished compost back. But in the county's program, we're not offering finished compost to the residents participating.
Okay.
Wonder what those-
And this question is for Niles, that I understand Bates took commingled back to PG to dump. Any reason they didn't or couldn't use Shady Grove? Starting in July with Titus, do they use Shady Grove?
Yeah, this is a great question. So the short answer is the reason why Bates couldn't is because they didn't have the trucks to do it. So going back to Alan's photos, if you saw those trucks had two sort of smaller bins on the back, so it was like putting it in separate things. That's the dual stream Titus will be doing dual stream. That's part of the reason why the town went with changing providers, is to allow for this dual stream so we can use the county facilities so that we can take advantage of some of this stuff. So starting July 1, actually starting in a couple of weeks, really, you will be getting new recycling containers. You'll get 2 of them. One will be the cardboard and paper products, and the other will be the aluminum and the glass and that kind of things. So that, and we'll be sending everyone information. You'll know exactly what's in it, and we'll have and we already have information from the county as well. So you'll get all of that. So you'll separate it, and then they will take it in that dual stream manner to the county.
Okay. Somebody is asking if plastic can be recycled and reused forever.
So that's a really good question. No, it can't be recycled forever. So at some point, it's going to be recycled to its furthest point as possible. So it won't be able to be like an aluminum can, for example. You can recycle an aluminum can over and over and over and over again. It will not apply to plastic. So generally what happens is the plastics get downgraded into another form, but ultimately at its lowest form, it won't be able to be recycled into a new product.
Okay. Are mattresses and box springs a home pickup, or do we have to take them to Shady Grove?
That's a wonderful question. So with our mattress and box spring recycling program right now, it is only a drop off at the transfer station. We do not have curbside collection of that. And it's a great segue also into the Poolesville beauty spot. So the beauty spot is only for what we consider bulk trash. Bulk trash would be things like things from a home remodeling project, carpeting, furniture, mirrors, glass tabletops, bathroom fixtures, things like that. We are also taking mattresses and box springs as part of that bulk trash collection. So that's something we will be working out. But right now, for residents in the Poolesville area, if you bring it there, it's being treated as bulk trash. It's just that we have to figure out how to manage the materials coming in because it's mixed in. If we can pull that out when it comes to the transfer station. But at the transfer station, we do have a designated drop-off area just for the mattresses and box springs. But if the resident calls it as bulk trash, we're not going to be able to separate it out. It's going to be managed as bulk trash. So we encourage everyone, if possible, if they can get it to us, then we can ensure that it will be recycled.
Okay. There was one question. Can all lids and caps be recycled?
So we do ask everyone if, again, I'll defer to Niles on your upcoming contract, but for our from the county's program, we do ask residents to put all the caps and lids loose into their blue bin. Don't leave them attached to the container. At the recycling center, we will do the very best to try to recapture those caps and lids. A lot of those caps and lids are made from a different material than the actual container itself. But the predominant reason why we ask residents to remove those caps and lids is we really need those containers to be emptied. If you leave the cap or lid on, you may be tempted to leave the contents in that container. And at the recycling center, when we process the materials, we're compressing the materials down, the plastics down, we're puncturing holes in them, we're flattening them because it's much easier for the sorters to remove that flattened piece of plastic off the conveyor belt than to say a gallon container. If a resident leaves the cap on with liquid in there, when that happens, when that plastic gets compressed, that cap will shoot out and then all the contents will then spray out. It's not an issue if it's a water bottle or if it's a soda bottle, except things will get sticky. But if somebody left some bleach in that container, when that bleach bottle gets crushed, now you got bleach flying around, it can potentially impact the workers. So that's why we don't want any capsule lids, even if the bottle says, if you buy like a Coke product, I was at a presentation yesterday and said, well, I was drinking a bottle of Coke and it says, please leave the cap on. That's coming from Coke, but it's not coming from your local recycler. So please, caps and lids come off, and we are doing our very best to capture them in the recycling process at the recycling center.
So with the town, it will be a similar situation there. So we'll,
Thank you.
for a lot of those things, since it will be going to the transfer station, it's the same kind of procedures to make it all consistent there.
Thank you,
Okay,
Niles.
thank you. How clean does a pizza box need to be?
Oh, I was waiting for that question. So pizza boxes. Um, so as part of our mixed paper program, we will take pizza boxes, but they have to be clean. So if the lid is clean, meaning there's no grease, there's no cheese, there's no sauce, you can rip off the lid and throw the lid in with your mixed paper. But the bottom part, bottom part that's greasy, cheesy, wet, that should go into your trash. Unless you have a food scraps program, then that greasy soiled paper can then be mixed in with the food scraps program. So that's why we're really excited about our food scrap efforts, because we can then take those greasy pizza boxes, the napkins, the paper towels as part of that collection. But because of the grease, once it gets embedded in the paper fibers, the paper mills really have a hard time recycling that paper because water and oil don't mix. And so when they pulp up that paper and there's grease in there, that grease really causes a problem in their paper recycling process. So, and the paper has to be clean before you can put it in there. So if the lid is clean, rip it off, throw the lid in the recycling. But if it's any oil, please throw it in the trash right now.
Okay. Okay, another question was, aren't all these compostable food takeout containers lined or coated with PFAs to keep them leak proof?
It's a good question. I'm not sure if all of them. I know there is issue with PFAs, PFAS. So I can't comment on if all the containers are. I'm not aware of all that thing. So there's a lot of research being done right now on that issue, but I'm not an expert in it. So we're gonna have to say I can't answer that question for 100% confidence.
Okay. Did anybody else have anything they want to jump in and say? And I see another question for Niles, but looks like he stepped away for a second.
Yeah, the question for Niles, just so folks know, I'm curious if they're going to be making a pickup of our old recycling containers since we're getting these new dual use containers. That would be very, very convenient if we've got a way to get rid of those old blue or green containers.
Any other questions?
Guess we can always recycle our recycling containers.
Well, I do know for Montgomery County, our recycling containers, because they get tossed around over years, they get broken. So they actually go back to the manufacturer and to be recycled into new containers. As part of our bulky rigid plastics, so we also take plastic containers as well through our bulky rigid plastics. But again, the town may have a program that they're going to be, I see now stepped away. So I'm sure he'll be able to answer that question when he comes back.
Well, I'd like to ask, when you say zero waste, is there really a zero waste, goal? Is there a point in time where Montgomery County is aspirational, or is it truly a metric kind of that you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, Ted, thanks. It's a good question. So we're aiming for zero waste. Of course,
Right.
naturally, can we ever get to truly zero waste? I don't think that's a possibility, but we're trying to do the best we can to minimize the amount of waste that has to be treated as waste. So by maximizing our waste reduction efforts, our reuse efforts, maximizing our recycling achievement, trying to find all these different recycling initiatives that we're not able to do right now, but expanding these programs, making it more convenient for folks to recycle and think about their trash differently. Our goal is to really minimize the amount of trash that is generated that ultimately has to be disposed.
And would the county buildings, county offices, does Montgomery County itself do zero waste practice it? So if you work for the county government, or do you? You do. So yeah. I mean, I'm sorry.
No, you don't be sorry. No.
Yeah.
So here in Montgomery County, it is a lot of recycle. So it applies to everyone, including businesses. And our definition of businesses does include local, state, and federal government facilities. So all Montgomery County government must comply with our recycling regulations. All of the county facilities have recycling programs in place. The county's recycling programs are managed by the Department of General Services for all the county facilities. So they're just like with the town, with businesses, there's a private contractor that the county Department of General Services contracts with for the collection and recycling of those materials. Just like anywhere else, things go wrong, things happen. Right. We're coming out of COVID where, things are completely different than they were prior to COVID. Generation levels have changed, contracts have changed. So we're finding as we're going back now that containers have gone missing, disappeared, walked away. New employees coming on who started with the county as telework employees during the pandemic, and they're coming into the office and they never stepped foot in there before. They don't know nothing about the program. So it's a major educational effort that we're undertaking right now. But we do have staff who are dedicated, working with our facilities to make sure that those programs are in place. And so if there is a county facility you come across, you don't see recycling, or you're not sure, let me know. We will send our recycling education team out there to work with that facility, make sure that they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. And if not, get it fixed so they are doing what they're supposed to be doing. But yes, all county facilities are required to recycle. And as part of the zero waste many years ago, the county executive created our paper reduction act, not act, but a policy to minimize the amount of paper generated. But I can tell you, with this whole advent, because of COVID, I mean, it sort of was an interesting thing how it happened, because nobody thought of a paperless office. But it's amazing how much paperless we have gone as a result of COVID. We're now, like, for example, invoices. In our office, we have no paper invoices anymore. The contractor will send it to us electronically. Everything gets signed electronically and saved electronically. There is no printing of 20, 30-page invoices anymore. So we are seeing a really a movement towards this area, and it was really spurred on by the pandemic. So it's been just a fascinating thing to observe over the years in terms of the solid waste world, seeing how the pandemic has changed how we operate.
Niles, while you were away for a second, there was a question for you. Will pickup of our old containers be done after Titus takes over and we get the new dual stream containers?
So we are currently working with Bates to remove the old containers. We're still trying to figure out the exact specifics of how we'll do it. But that is the plan. So the plan as of now is for Bates on their last recycling pickup to take the containers, and roughly about that same time you'll get the new ones. So that's the plan, but we're still working out the details. There'll be more information on that to come as well.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions? Was there anything in particular, Niles, that you wanted to share about the new process?
Certainly. So just so that just a couple of general points just to go over. Your recycling day will stay the same. It'll be Wednesdays. Your yard waste will stay the same. It'll also be Wednesday. The big change is about trash, actually. We're going to do it where half of town will be on a Monday, Thursday schedule. The other half will be Tuesday, Friday. So that's the big change. But we will be giving you more information. In fact, I have a meeting tomorrow where we're going to go over exactly what part of town will get what day. You'll be notified of that in advance. And also Titus will if you put it out on the wrong day, they'll put a thing that says you're supposed to be Tuesday, like they'll pick it up, but it will be, trying to the early time educate people and making sure that the new schedule makes sense. So most will stay the same. Outside of, again, you'll get bins rather than one, separate, and then two, the trash days will be a little bit different. So all of this will be communicated out both by letters to every household and electronically. So you'll have plenty of ways of doing that. And if you have any questions, poolesvillemd.gov, just go there. One, we'll have written information on the website, but two, you can reach out to town hall directly from there. So that's my main thing.
Sounds great. Anybody have any last questions? Well, I want to thank you both for taking the time to be here with us today and sharing all this information. It was very helpful and very informative. And I wanted to thank everyone for coming to view the presentation with us tonight. If you did enjoy this event, you can be sure to look on our website, poolesvilleseniors.org, and you can see some other events we have coming up, such as Brad Stone presenting Animals in the Civil War. That's going to be on Tuesday the 13th. And of course, Kenny's Historic Ag Reserve will be on Thursday the 15th. Both of those are at 7 o'clock. So again, check our website for registration and times and places and all that good stuff. So feel free to unmute and say goodbye.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Alan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thanks,
all.
everyone.
You,
Have a great evening.
you
You too.
too.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Yeah.